time.
Great.
Who still questions the power of our democracy. Tonight is your answer.
Tonight is your answer.
We effing did it! It's been a long time coming, but tonight, at this defining moment, change has come to America. Yeah! Yeah, Obama! Change!
Shut up, Randy.
It's change! Sasha and Malia, I love you both more than you can imagine. And you have earned the new puppy that's coming with us to the White House.
And you have earned the new puppy that's coming with us to the White House.
We will name him Sparkles. He's so awesome! He's so perfect and awesome! Where we are met with cynicism and doubt and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Yes, we can!
Timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can.
Yes, I can! Yes, I can!
I think it's we, Randy.
Our man is it!
We did it!
Everything is going to be awesome now! This is...
It might just be me, but I don't ever feel like, oh, everything's going to be awesome now. And I don't care what president gets put into office. It always feels like there's one side that's not going to like who gets elected, and then the other side is going to like the person. And then you got people that kind of fall in between. Donald Trump just got inaugurated for the second time, and he's a really polarizing president.
The golden age of America begins right now.
There are people who are living...
America begins right now.
There are people who are livid that he is in office, and then you have people who are really staunch supporters of him too. It is what it is, I guess.
Losers!
Who are livid that he is in office, and then you have people who are really staunch supporters of him too. It is what it is, I guess.
Losers! Losers! Losers!
It's like that every election. There's gotta be a loser.
Shut up!
It's McCain Palin, yeah.
It's natural tonight to feel some disappointment. We fought as hard as we could, and though we fell short, the failure is mine, not yours.
No, no!
No!
The failure is mine, not yours.
Poor old John McCain. Well, he looks real sad.
No, no, this can't happen. No!
Stephen!
Uh-oh.
It's all over, Linda. The country as we know it is about to change. We're all dead.
You don't know
you're
that,
not.
Stephen.
With an inexperienced man and president, we do know it. He is right. Game over, man. Okay?
Game over, man. It's game over.
We'll probably game over, man. Okay?
Game over, man. It's game over.
We'll probably be dead by sunrise. But it's Daddy loves you. Just remember that. He always loved you.
Dude.
He always loved you.
Dude, have you seen my parents? No, everyone's out partying in the streets. What's wrong with your brother? He was a McCain supporter. It's okay, Ike. Obama will do fine.
Senator McCain.
Uh-oh.
President Obama.
There you go.
McCain.
Uh-oh.
President Obama.
There you go.
Boom, baby!
Oh man, that was perfect. I almost thought we were gonna tie for a minute there. That would have screwed us.
You played it perfectly. There was no way.
It's McCain. We did it. Obama is president. Assemble the rest of the team. We've only got 10 hours.
Sure, hard part's over, right?
Actually, the hard part's just starting.
Celebrate good Obama, come on! It's Obama, Obama.
This is your celebration.
What? Randy? It's great to celebrate your side and all. Randy? It's great to celebrate your side and all, but there has to be a next day, right? You aren't really going to know what a president's going to do until they get into office and actually serve their term. Wow.
Who let the Obama out? Who let the dogs out?
They are partying hard.
Police are here. Okay, people, time to disperse. Party's over. What are you, a McCain voter? Yeah! Sorry, pal, but Obama's president now. Obama! Obama!
Get it, Bar Brady.
Yeah, flip the cop car! Flip the cop car!
Don't do that.
Put down my car! Yes, we can! No, hey, stop it! You're so fine, you blow my
And
mind.
pull
Hey,
your
Obama!
pants up, Red.
Hey, Obama! Arresting me for what? I'm not allowed to stand up for myself? I thought this was America.
Hey, you guys want to buy a TV? Ah, stop it!
I knew when you two ran for president, you were just working an angle.
Always working the angles.
Friends, while the entire country is busy reacting to the election, we are about to pull off the greatest heist in human history.
So, come on, enlighten us. What are we stealing this time?
Ocean's 11
Hope
type
Diamond.
plot.
Rated number 4 of the 10 most precious diamonds in the world.
Ocean's 11
Hope
type
Diamond.
plot.
Rated number 4 of the 10 most precious diamonds in the world.
Diamond?
Going street value, Middle Eastern market, of course, $210 million. 210? Almost. Billion. The Hope Diamond is ungettable. Every thief in the world knows that. Almost ungettable. The diamond is kept in the Smithsonian Natural History Museum, long considered to be the most thief-proof structure ever built. The diamond wing is protected by impenetrable walls of 2-foot wide steel. On the northeast side, a 7.5 laser system.
We're set.
Do it already.
There is simply no side of the Smithsonian that can be breached. Drop into it from the top. Can't get to it from the top because a polymer shelf runs the entire expanse. You can't get in the museum from any side, and you can't drop in from above, so you can't get the diamond.
Meet the Presidential Escape Tunnel, a 2-mile-long underground passage that runs from the White House to a location outside the Presidential Escape Tunnel in case of an attack. The tunnel is only accessible from the Oval Office and just happens to travel right underneath the Smithsonian Natural History Museum.
Boom, baby!
And we run a particularly brutal campaign so that the nation is as distracted as possible over the next 8 hours.
We've spent 10 years putting this plan together. If we are indeed the greatest thief club in the world, and we are, we won't get caught.
Yes, I'm trying to locate my parents. My name is Kyle Broflovsky. Yes, I know Obama won. Kyle, you gotta get out here. Your little brother's climbed out of the window. I think he's gonna jump. Oh my God!
It's not that serious, Ike.
Don't
Go back in the house.
There's still so much to live for. No, that's not true, Ike. The economy could easily stabilize with Obama's plan. Ike, don't jump. You could really hurt your ankle or something. Really, Ike, that's like 5 feet off the ground. Don't do it. Goodbye. No! Ike! Oh, crap, Ike!
Hello, is there something we can do for you, Mr. Obama?
Crap, Ike! No! Ike! Oh, crap, Ike!
Hello, is there something we can do for you, Mr. Obama? I'd like to see the Oval Office, please. Right now? I don't waste time, gentlemen. I've only got 2 months to figure out how I want to redecorate, if you know what I mean. You know, change the drapes and stuff. Sure, right this way, Mr. President. I will need absolute privacy. Is that understood? Yes, sir. Thanks. I got $100.
We're in position outside the Smithsonian. You find the escape tunnel?
I'm already on it. Boom, baby.
Elections are a pretty good distraction, though. I can't lie. People are so busy, like, going at each other.
Dad, we have a problem.
Not anymore, we don't. Everything's different now.
We gotta take Kyle's brother to the hospital.
We don't have to take crap from the rich fat cats anymore.
Dude, he's wasted.
Hey, it's my boss. Hey, boss.
These 3 words mean you're getting busy. Whoop, there it is.
Oh, go, Marsh. Yeah, you know what? Fuck you.
Whoa.
You heard me, you fucking piece of shit. I can finally tell you what I think you.
Gotta
what
go
are
to
you
work
doing?
tomorrow.
It's okay, Stan. Everything's changed. I don't need a stupid fuck job anymore.
Yes, you do.
Ass piece of shit.
Can someone help us? My little brother fell out of the window.
Oh.
To everyone who's a little disappointed that we lost the election, that there's always next year. Maybe I'll run for vice president again in 2009.
That's not how that
Mrs.
works.
Palin, have you seen or heard from John McCain?
No, I don't really know where he went. Kinda seems a little odd, I guess, but... Oh, my phone's going ringy.
Some Republicans have said you're not prepared, you're not ready for prime time. People have questioned your readiness.
Hello, Sarah. It's
Prepared, you're not ready for prime time. People have questioned your readiness.
Hello, Sarah. It's McCain.
I hope to God you're calling to tell me you're in position below the vault with the L7
The
jobs.
accent
In the
change.
tunnel now, Sarah. Should be almost
She
below
played
you.
him.
You're in position below the...
Hello, Sarah. It's McCain.
I hope to God you're calling to tell me you're in position below the vault with the L7
The
jobs.
accent
In the
change.
tunnel now, Sarah. Should be almost
She
below
played him
museum.
too.
Just make sure you don't blow the transformers along with the tunnel because it will trigger the 5-4 laser system. I'll be there in 30.
God, she's awesome.
Oh, I guess Senator McCain's gonna fly me back to Alaska now. He's got a private jet, you know. Okay, bye-bye then. Bloody idiots.
Switched it on him. With the size.
What's that noise?
It's okay. Just some construction outside. Oh, no. McCain, we've got a problem.
Oh, no,
Hang in there, Ike. We're gonna get you help.
Where are his parents?
Listen, stay back! We don't have any more room in the Ark! You have to let us in. You know the country is doomed.
Who are you to turn us away?
I built this bunker in case McCain lost. There isn't enough room for everyone.
Really?
Hey, excuse me, but we need some help.
I know you do, but there's no more room, I tell ya! You're going to deny them too? God's sakes, man, they're children! Look them in the eyes and tell them you won't take them in! Look at their little cheeks!
Go on my face, asshole.
All right, damn you, the children can come in!
No, we don't want in your stupid shelter.
Okay, then I want their place.
Me too.
We need to get a ride to the hospital.
There isn't gonna be a hospital, don't you get it?
Let us in now!
Oh. Oh.
Oh, jeez, it's already happening. Society's breaking down.
Obama hasn't been elected 4 hours and already the country's going to hell.
Oh, goodness.
Everything okay in there? Why wouldn't it be? I'm sorry, but I asked to be left alone. Yes, sir. It's just that your wife is here.
Barack, everyone's been looking for you. What on earth are you doing?
Come on in, darling. Thank you, boys. The laser system guarding the diamond was replaced by an optical relay 3 days ago.
You gotta be kidding me. So the entire
Her
diamond
too.
vault is inaccessible? Is McCain online?
Hi, Michelle. We need you to do a different scan hack to the vault relay.
On a new system in an hour? Are you nuts? My job was to pretend to be married to this bozo and get you 3 scan hacks into a laser system. Michelle, it's Sarah. They did replace the laser system, but the new
With
one
the
isn't brand
cleavage.
new. It's an old H7 series. You can break this baby in 30 minutes.
Tell Davis to get me a 4 transmitter and enough pulse drives to light a spark.
You catch that, Davis?
I'm on it.
We
Back
made it,
at
Ike.
Hell's
You're
Pass.
going to be okay.
There, just take a seat over there.
Excuse me, my little brother needs
Peed
medical
himself?
attention.
Was he an Obama supporter or a McCain supporter?
Why does that matter?
Because then I'll know if he partied too hard or if he tried to kill himself.
What's up with people's
Please, I think my
pants
little brother
being
needs
down?
immediate help.
You don't understand, kid. There's only 2 doctors on call, and Dr. Wilson is out celebrating in the street somewhere.
So where's the other doctor?
Oh.
Obama, well, you came and you gave without taking. And I sent you away, Obama. When you kissed me, it stopped me from shaking.
Will you kiss me and stop me from shaking?
You're only going to have 5 minutes. Do you understand?
Did you really not like pretending to be married?
Oh, Jesus, now is not the time, B.
Come on, you have to admit we had some fun.
My girls need somebody better than a world-class diamond thief. Wait, there, I got it.
All right, everyone, we're about to go. 4:40 a.m., the team gathers at the northwest exit of the museum. 4:45 a.m., Michelle hacks the optical relay, allowing me access to the rear doors. 4:46, from inside I can open the doors and let in the rest of the crew. 5:10 a.m., at the Department of Power, Quincy shuts down the grid, disabling power to the vault room. 5:12, my grandmother who faked her death on Monday calls in a bomb threat to the museum.
And while she's no longer with us, I know my grandmother's watching.
Museum.
And while
5:12, my grandmother who faked her death on Monday calls in a bomb threat to the museum.
And while she's no longer with us, I know my grandmother's watching.
I said I put a bomb in your building. Yes.
5:13, the guards open the southwest door, checking the museum for any bombs. 5:14, McCain, dressed as a football player, enters security and shuts off the diamond case alarm.
Why?
Hey, you, stop! Michelle and I head back
Like
to the
they wouldn't know it was him.
5:15 a.m. I walk out of the Oval Office with the diamond securely hidden in my anus. All done, thanks.
Why?
Boom, baby!
I hope you wipe that off, okay?
Don't you think people are going to be suspicious when you disappear? We hired a guy for that a couple months ago.
Wow, Ike was in on it. That's crazy.
What the hell? Ike?
Boom, baby.
Nice. Air Tahiti.
Here are all the tickets for your group, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you very much.
Here are all the tickets for your group, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you very much.
Hey, you guys go ahead. I just came to say goodbye.
What?
I've decided to hang it up. Maybe give this president thing a shot.
Oh.
He died in a jet in the Rocky Mountains, remember? Could have been I didn't make that flight. What do you say, Michelle? Would you and your girls like to move into the White House with me? You know, settle down. Just be president and first lady for a while.
You're serious?
Who knows? Maybe we could change a few things. What do you say?
What the fuck?
Nice.
I just love happy endings.
Is it gonna be a happy ending? I'm just always on edge with South Park.
It's still here. It's all still here.
Of course it is, Mr.
Does that
Scotch.
mean maybe we overreacted?
I mean,
No,
you could
no,
go
I wouldn't
haywire,
say
but
that.
it's unlikely.
Maybe Obama would be all right.
Oh, Randy.
Oh, ow. Ow. Hey, where are my pants?
That was
Where's
my
our
question.
TV? Where are my pants and where's my TV?
Hey, you guys want to buy a TV? Dad, your boss called. He said you're fired.
God damn it! Obama said things would be different. That son of a bitch lied to us.
Didn't
I
yourself?
knew I should have voted for McCain.
I've probably mentioned it before, but I'm not the most politically minded person in the world. But I think this episode is pretty fitting because Donald Trump was just inaugurated, and you see a lot of the same patterns that happen from election to election between parties and such. And I realized that I wasn't in America for either of Obama's terms. And if I'm not mistaken,
The Subscription Economy, Why Gen Z is So Poor, by Cole Hastings.
The midnight release at GameStop, one of the most sought-after moments of the year for gamers around the world. As early as 6 to 12 hours before launch, prepubescent teens and older brothers who could legally buy the game for them would camp out in front of the store with one shared goal.
Take me back to the launch of Halo 3. That's all I ask for.
To be among the first to own and play the year's most anticipated release. It was an indescribable
there it is.
Feeling. Being able to hold that physical copy in your hands.
It's beautiful.
Reading through the manual attached to the inside of the front cover on the way home. It was one of the first ever memories that I have of being able to claim something as truly my own without my parents' aid. And displaying these discs in my TV console became a subtle symbol of status.
Yep. 100%. That's so true. The amount of games you had and your curation of them equaled your swag for a hot minute. I remember going to my friend's house and he just had just those green cases lined up.
When I open my current apartment's closet, now empty of physical games, I'm hit with a stark realization. Experiences like the midnight release at GameStop are rapidly fading into obsolescence. Think about the last thing that you bought. Do you actually own it? Can you resell it?
Nope, because you're getting grinded by inflation and taxation. You will own nothing and live in the pods. You will eat bugs and red meat will be reserved for the elite.
Modify it? Are you
You think I'm joking, but it's becoming more of a reality every fucking day.
Sure? From the music we listen to the roofs over our heads, and of course the games we now play.
It's all in the cloud. Would you like to update your game from the cloud?
We're slowly moving from a world of ownership to one of eternal renting. Is the convenience of these new business models really benefiting you as a consumer, or is there a deeper, devious reason bubbling under the surface that influenced this change? That's what I want to explore and find out. In the early 1990s, nobody could have imagined a world in which no extra physical space was needed to be able to listen to every song you wanted to hear. But when Steve Jobs created the first iPod in 2001,
I miss my iPod. I don't understand. They could be making so much money by re-releasing the iPod.
With the slogan 1,000 songs in your pockets, everyone would soon start to understand the value of digitizing physical products. The iPod offered two legitimate paths to digital music, purchasing directly from iTunes or...
This guy probably eats a soy-based diet. I'm pretty sure Cole is vegan.
Converting your existing CDs into digital files. This revolutionary approach to portable music sparked explosive growth, but it also created an unexpected parallel revolution. As Apple promoted its paid ecosystem,
burning CDs for chicks you were banging was so romantic. Dude, part of my riz, I think I was like 16, I made a CD for a girl. I should have never done that. I should have kept it to myself.
Millions discovered a backdoor solution through peer-to-peer file sharing networks, allowing them to fill their devices with music without spending a dime. Websites like Napster and LimeWire used a system in which users could upload the music they owned to a decentralized...
Dude, I remember feeling like a hacker doing YouTube to MP3 and then putting it on my iTunes so I can download music for free.
Server for anyone to download for free, and I definitely did not use LimeWire.
Yeah, she heard 5 seconds of Death Grips and never talked to me again. Guillotine!
Or actually, we all used LimeWire as a kid. If you are a very late Gen Zer or millennial, I know you were on LimeWire searching for that Darude Sandstorm. But you can...
Yup. Back when we had joysticks, now all we have are soy sticks.
See why this would be a massive problem for everyone involved in the production of the music. Artists and record labels were not receiving any royalties for freely downloaded songs and albums, and so it eventually led to these sites.
I don't care, actually. It turns out, don't give a fuck. Why is modern gaming so bad? The Master Chief Collection is 6 remasters and it still doesn't work. So a lot to unpack. Hopefully he talks about some points and then I'll springboard off them like a college lecture class.
Being sued and shut down for copyright infringement. But the damage had already been done. It became abundantly clear that the digital information age would keep spawning new platforms like this, where users looking to save money could find free versions of their favorite artists' songs with enough searching. A solution needed to be made, and it needed to be made fast. And thus, the music streaming subscription service industry bloomed. If everybody trying to get me to buy a subscription, I know browsers you can download for free got me.
The only subscription you guys need is to Philion's Patreon. Patreon.com/Philion. Well, there will be 3 and more to come unreleased raw interviews as part of our feature-length documentary that's coming out in T-minus 10 days.
Am I right? There's a lot of browsers that all behave a bit differently out there, but the one with the coolest features that I've used so
Metal
far
Gear
is Opera.
Soylent.
Let's say I'm making a video about sneezing and farting at the same time. I want to be able to read this article while I write my script, but then I gotta find a way to open 2 browser apps at once and fit them on my screen. But with Opera, all I gotta do is drag one of the tabs and they automatically create a split screen for you. Then I realize I'd rather have a summary of this page. Easy, with Opera's new Aria AI tool, you can get a detailed summary simply by pressing Command or Control on Windows plus the / button. Cool, now I know more about what makes us sneeze. That's really useful info. Then perhaps an image of someone sneezing and farting at the same time?
Philly Patreon and YouTube Premium only. That's just the only 2 you need.
Perfect. And all while I'm doing this, I have one of the nicest themes I've ever seen in a browser, which I can customize to change the colors, animations, and browser sounds. Lastly, it gives you the option to pop out the music player of your choice for the subscription you're spending hundreds on per year, so you don't have to keep switching between your music app and your browser when you're doing work, or multitasking brain rot with music listening with that assignment you have due. Opera? I'm impressed. Honestly, I've seen a ton of other YouTubers talk about Opera in their videos. And when they approached me, I didn't know what to expect, but now Opera is going to be my daily driver on my laptop whenever I'm browsing or researching something. So if you're interested in upgrading your browser and using Opera and getting access to all these cool features, then you can click the first link in my description. Spotify was really the first platform to make an imprint in the scene and offered what seemed to be the perfect solution. It solved the
reason why I use Spotify and not Apple Music, because Spotify is clearly better for one reason and one reason only: dark mode. Built-in dark mode. You're not beating that. That's all they needed to do to win me over, and it was from the start.
Growing concern for pirated music, and found a way to create a service that was better than piracy and at the same time compensated the music industry. Spotify offers both a free
the most soy game of the 2010s, Overwatch
version with limited features and a premium version which is completely ad-free and gives you the ability to download and listen to tracks without data or Wi-Fi for just $10 a month. When we were all first exposed to this model, it honestly felt like a dream. I could search for any song that was recorded professionally that I want, with no ads and no potential viruses. And I wasn't even paying for each one individually. All I had to do was pay $10 a month for the platform. It was a steal. Although I might feel that way on the surface, the reality for a lot of listeners, and especially the artists themselves,
Overwatch is responsible for every game having that same graphic style now. I know, it's the worst. It is the cancer that spread.
Can often be a lot more deceiving. For example, let's say you're like me, an average Spotify premium listener, and you listen to 15 to 20 hours of music per week. If we assume the average length of a song is 3 minutes, that means we listen to roughly 340 songs per month. If we were to buy each of these songs individually, that would cost us around $340. But with Spotify Premium, we only had to pay $10 for that.
Yes! Stealing money from the artists.
That month's listening. Happy ending, right? Well, if you're not a frequent re-listener like me and you're constantly listening to new songs, then yes, you as a consumer are genuinely winning this deal. But suppose we expand this phenomenon over a year and we add in the element of repeated listening. I don't know about you guys, but I'm someone who listens to the same 3 to 5 albums over and over for at least an entire year. If that's the case, and each album, let's say, has an average of 12 songs, that means I'm really only listening to about 48 songs per year. If I
Bro did the math.
or to buy these albums of songs, it would only cost me $30 to $50. But with a Spotify premium subscription, I'm charged $120 for the whole year. And as the years go on, you're paying more and more for the same songs you've always...
The convenience of just ripping any song I ever want is worth the $10 a month.
...listened to indefinitely. Now, is the extra $50 to $90 per year really worth having any song that I want at any time?
He stole the words right out of my mouth.
You could definitely argue that it is, but when you decide to use a music subscription service, your music can and will be
You know, people have been talking.
You make his head go around so fast that it spins off. R4 is really an R2 painted red, isn't it?
Careful what you're saying about R4, because you can get bopped on the head real quick.
If you haven't seen the video I did on the Phantom Menace earlier this year, you should definitely check that out. It's part 1 in this longest fuck series where I analyze each and every Star Wars movie in exhaustive detail, and if that sounds exciting to you, you're a fucking nerd. Welcome to the channel. I don't want to waste any time with preambles since I already went your series where I analyze each and every Star Wars movie in exhaustive detail, and if that sounds exciting to you, you're a fucking nerd. Welcome to the channel. I don't want to waste any time with preambles since I already went over what I aim to accomplish in the last video, but I figure since we're talking about Attack of the Clones, we need to lay down some ground rules. It goes without saying that this is the movie that kicks off the Clone Wars, something that fans have been waiting ever since 1977 to get some more backstory on, and an era that nowadays has so much supplementary content I wouldn't even know where to begin talking about it. Well, actually I do, and I have, but seeing as I've already said my piece on the Clone Wars, I wanted to be clear that I will not be using anything from that show as a reference for or against this film. I believe in judging things as they exist in the context of when they were made, so things like the OT and the Phantom Menace matter when assessing how Attack of the Clones fits into the world of Star Wars, but nothing after the fact. And certainly not supplementary material. I say this now because I know a lot of people are going to try to counter some of my points with things like, the Clone Wars says this, and you're welcome to do so, just as I'm welcome to scream into a void that I don't want to do my taxes. Uncle Sam doesn't care, and neither do I. Besides, you're welcome to use the Clone Wars to defend this movie all you want, but all I have to do is counter with all the ways in which that show damages the larger Star Wars canon, so two can play at that game. And like I said, no supplementary material as always. You guys know I love the books, and it always irks me when they get trampled on, but I've been consistent in trying to judge these movies based on their own merits and how they connect to each other. So I could go on about how, for example, this movie completely retconned Boba Fett's backstory from the EU, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take what this movie establishes about that character at face value and judge it as is. I mean, it's still not very good, but we'll get into that. And one last thing. In my Phantom Menace video, I basically just went through the movie chronologically and broke down the plot that way, and that's because the story is relatively simple and straightforward. But Attack of the Clones is notorious for having a really convoluted and confusing plot, and the simple task of trying to unravel it and line it all up is going to be kind of tricky. So I figured before we can talk about things like characters, themes, world building, and all that other fun stuff, first we need to establish what actually happens in this movie, what all the involved characters know at the beginning and by the end, and how all that tracks. You might think you have a decent understanding of the plot of this movie and that I'm just being ridiculous, but every time I sit down and have someone try to explain it to me, they end up realizing how little sense any of it makes, and so that's what this part of the review is meant to clear up. It doesn't help that a lot of these same people who misunderstand this movie have made reviews of their own, and that's caused this misinformation to spread to the masses in ways that can no longer be contained.
Palpatine sends a man, who sends a man, who sends a shapeshifter, who sends a robot, who sends bugs to go kill Padme.
At this point,
who sends a
people who misunderstand this movie have made reviews of their own, and that's caused this misinformation to spread to the masses in ways that can no longer be contained.
Palpatine sends a man who sends a man who sends a shapeshifter who sends a robot who sends bugs to go kill Padme.
At this point, all I can do is try to work through it myself, and any of you who want to join in on the fun are welcome to watch me lose my fucking mind. Let's take that cosmonaut clip I just played for you as a starting point. I didn't want to bring him up again in this video because I already spent a fair bit of time lambasting his and Plinkett's reviews in the last one, but watching Cosmonaut's review of Attack of the Clones made it crystal clear to me just how confused a lot of people are by the plot of this film. I'm not even particularly blaming Cosmonaut for not getting it either, but he does get a lot of things wrong.
So in this movie, Palpatine is trying to kill Padme. But why? Padme is going to make things difficult, so he has to kill her. But he messes up and doesn't kill her. But that's okay. He actually wants Anakin to get close to her and fall in love. But then he tries to have her killed anyway right after that. You're really lucky that none of these Pokemon ate her, because then Anakin would just be a good guy forever and your plan wouldn't work.
This is, I think, the most important thing to try to clear up if we expect to make any sense of this story. Does Palpatine want Padme dead? Now, prequel fans will quickly jump in to counter that the assassination attempts are being done by Dooku on behalf of Newt Gunray, who wants her dead because they have beef from the last movie.
What about the senator from Naboo? Is she dead yet? I am not signing your treaty until I have her head on my desk.
I am a man of my word, Viceroy.
And that is true. Gunray wants her dead, and Dooku has no problems killing her because she's the one leading the movement in the Senate to vote against creating an army. Obviously, Dooku wants the war to break out, so that's a no-go. But it still ultimately comes down to Palpatine. If he thought for even a moment that Padme dying would impede his plans in the grand scheme of things, he wouldn't have let Dooku agree to that deal. They would have just had to figure out some other way to get Gunray to pledge his support. So it stands to reason that Palpatine is happy to let Padme die, but let's look at what that means for his goals if he does. Ultimately, what Palpatine wants to accomplish above all else is taking over the galaxy, transitioning the Republic into a galactic empire, and placing himself at the top of that. Any and all other concerns come second to that, so if it was a matter between choosing starting the war or pulling Anakin to his side, I think anyone who argues he'd pick the latter is severely overestimating just how badly Palpatine needs Anakin. Like, sure, he wants him as an apprentice, but if he were to die in some random battle during the war, or refuse to give in to the dark side when Palpatine tries to tempt him, it's no massive loss. He can still just as easily wipe out the Jedi with or without Vader leading the assault, I promise you. So that's first and foremost. I don't think Anakin turning to the dark side would ever be prioritized over Sheev becoming Emperor. But also, I don't think there's any reason to think he has to choose one or the other here. People also seem to overestimate Padme's role in Anakin ultimately becoming Vader. Like, yes, it was his motivation to save her from death that caused him to turn to, let's say, alternative sources when the Jedi denied him the rank of Master. But I think we're putting the cart before the horse here. It's strongly implied in Revenge of the Sith that the only reason Anakin was even having those visions of Padme dying was because Palpatine was showing them to him. He was using the connection Anakin had built with Padme to play on his deepest fears, but if Padme wasn't around for that aspect of the plan, he would have just had to resort to other means, of which there are plenty. Anakin is an emotionally stunted and unstable person who, while he always tries his best to be good and do the right thing, has way too much baggage from his childhood to ever truly be able to let go of his attachments. He's constantly being chastised by Obi-Wan, a man he looks up to like a father, for even the smallest mistakes, which causes him to overcorrect and bottle up his thoughts. Palpatine is basically the only person that Anakin feels he can truly confide in, so already I'd say he has a pretty sizable hook in. There is also the matter of Anakin's mother. Assuming Padme were to die at the beginning of Attack of the Clones, if Palpatine ever needed to use someone close to Anakin as motivation to join the Sith, Shmi is right there. I know she dies in this movie, but I don't think Palpatine had any way of knowing that was gonna happen, and if anything, it was kind of a huge coincidence that it did when it did. But even then, I see no reason why Palpatine wouldn't be able to use Shmi's death as a motive going forward. He could easily play on the fact that the Jedi left her there on Tatooine without a second thought because they only actually cared about what Anakin might represent for their order. We've talked about it on the channel before, but the fact that the Jedi never bothered to lift a finger to help the slaves on the far side of the galaxy should be a massive point of contention between them and Anakin. And the death of his mother is only going to amplify that because they could have saved her. I can easily see Palpatine playing on that resentment and subsequently a resentment for the Republic, who the Jedi ultimately answered to and are why they never did anything about slavery, to convince Anakin that things need to fundamentally change. There are a lot of different ways I can see Palpatine playing this without Padme in the picture, and again, even if Padme was somehow the only way to get Anakin to turn to the dark side, I think he'd rather just not have him than lose his chance to create the army. So either way, yeah, it makes sense that he's willing to have her killed. But with that said, the assassination attempt on Padme doesn't make a lick of sense and is one of the funniest things about this entire movie. The first attempt makes enough sense, I think. Zam blows up Padme's ship, but Padme uses a decoy and she dies instead. And an important detail that I want you guys to keep in mind is that the ship bombing was pinned on disgruntled spice miners on Naboo.
Do you have any idea who is behind this attack?
Our intelligence points to disgruntled spice miners on the moons of Naboo.
Which implies that Palpatine and Dooku are intentionally trying to disguise the real culprits behind it. Padme still seems to quickly figure it out though.
I think that Count Dooku is behind it.
And so this is going to be a running theme throughout the plot assessment, so I'm glad we're getting it out of the way now. A lot of people, myself included, find it a bit confusing that Padme would believe this. As far as the public seems to be aware, Dooku is the leader of a peaceful secessionist movement. All they want is to break away and establish their own government, and if they can do that without having to go to war against the Republic, well then that's just gravy. So why would Dooku, from an official standpoint, his status as a Sith Lord orchestrating the whole war and playing both sides of it from the beginning notwithstanding, want to kill Padme, the most prominent figurehead of the movement to abolish the Military Creation Act? Why would Padme believe that's something he wants to do when her death would essentially ensure war comes to his doorstep? Well, I think if we're being as charitable as we possibly can be to the film, this does actually make sense. It's just that they didn't bother to explain it as well as they should have. Dooku's whole brand is that he's this outspoken activist who's basically stoking the flames of this war in a very passive way. He pretends to not want war, but even in an official capacity, many senators like Padme would be able to tell that that's bullshit, and from what little we know about Dooku from these movies, I think that lines up as a reasonable assumption for her to make. Again, I just wish it was explained better, and like I said, I'm glad we found an example of this now, because that's going to be a running trend throughout. So many things about this plot don't make sense, and it's going to be up to us to make what inferences we can. But anyway, I asked you to keep in mind that Dooku seems to prefer if his involvement in Padme's assassination plot is kept a secret, though to what extent, I'm not really sure, and I think that might explain some of the questionable decisions the bounty hunters make when they make their second attempt, but even if we go with that, I still don't think it makes that much sense. So let's lay this out. Zam tells Jango that she hit the ship, but they failed, and so Jango tells her,
"We'll have to try something more subtle this time,"
before handing her a canister with these little centipede things inside of them, and the plan from there is to put the worm canister inside a little droid, send it over to Padme's apartment, have the droid cut a hole in her window, and deposit the worms and just hope they sting her, I guess. There are so many things wrong with this plan, I don't even know where to begin. Like, okay, so before we even get into the specifics, I guess I just want to know what Jango knows about the security detail on Padme right now. Like, surely he knows that there are 2 Jedi Knights guarding her, and Jedi have a reputation of being able to sense living things in the Force, so already sending 2 worms in is just a bad idea, on top of all the obvious reasons why that's dumb that we'll get into. If he doesn't know that there are Jedi guarding her, then I'm already questioning his competence as a bounty hunter, because that just seems like your basic due diligence. You want to know what you're walking into before just sending an operative to go kill a high-ranking, very important person like Padme. But speaking of, let's get a head count of Padme's security detail. Aside from Anakin and Obi-Wan, there's Captain Typho, who's in charge of her Naboo guard, and who apparently doesn't know that Anakin and Padme have decided on this rather ingenious plan to stage Padme in front of a fucking window as bait to lure out the assassins, because otherwise he should be protesting strongly. I know he can't tell Padme what to do, so if she wants to use herself as bait, she's gonna do it, but at the very least you think he'd stay right outside the room where Anakin and Obi-Wan are, right? And obviously it goes without saying he's gonna have men stationed in all the nearby buildings just to make sure there are no snipers in the area. Pretty much any room that has any kind of vantage point on Padme's bedroom is gonna have at least a couple guys in there, right? Well, you'd think that, but if there are any men watching her window from a neighboring skyscraper, they somehow managed to miss the fucking robot flying up right outside her bedroom and importing 2 little worms inside of it. R2 also missed this, apparently. One of the reasons Anakin gave Obi-Wan for why he believed Padme was safe was that the little fucker was in there watching her, but apparently he's on fucking low power mode or some shit. He's vaguely scanning the room, but apparently he's not attentive enough to notice a fucking droid floating outside cutting a hole in her window, so that's interesting. But at least tell me this window is bulletproof or something. Tell me it's several inches thick and can withstand.
You know, people have been talking to me.
withstand pretty much any means of devastation thrown its way. Of course. You know, Padme, I understand you want to catch these assassins and that you're not comfortable endangering other people in your place. I get that. It's very noble. But maybe when you're the most prominent member of the anti-military movement and you're so close to voting day, maybe it's a bit stupid and reckless to just forfeit your own life like this. It'd be one thing if we knew there was a competent politician who could step in for Padme in the event of her absence, like Bail Organa or Mon Mothma, but we know that's not true, so Padme, you're really playing with fire here.
I haven't worked for a year to defeat the Military Creation Act, to not be here when its fate is decided.
Now, I'm not going to get into detail on whether or not I think it's in character for Anakin or Obi-Wan to go along with a plan as reckless as this until I start talking about the character work. Spoilers, I actually think Obi-Wan is a bit more brash and impulsive than most people seem to think, and some of his hypocrisies are done on purpose by the narrative to highlight a flaw in his character. So, suffice it to say, I actually think on paper, both of them wanting to use Padme as bait is fine, but I think on paper by the narrative impulsive than most people seem to think, and some of his hypocrisies are done on purpose by the narrative to highlight a flaw in his character. So, suffice it to say, I actually think on paper, both of them wanting to use Padme as bait is fine, but not with all the reasons we've listed for why this plan is fucking stupid. I don't believe either of them would be willing to take that risk with the lackluster security she's currently working with. But with that said, there are so many ways to go about killing Padme, so let's check back in with the villains. Now again, if I'm a professionally trained bounty hunter and I've done my homework, back in with the villains. Now again, if I'm a professionally trained bounty hunter and I've done my homework by scouting this place and seeing what kind of security she's working with, I'm gonna obviously assume it's a trap, which of course it is, but I mean like a good one. Like, I don't believe I'm gonna be able to destroy that window without some kind of rocket launcher or something, and I'm certainly not gonna go there myself to do the job, so I'd actually say it's smart to send the droid instead. The droid should be armed with like a blaster or some other kind of projectile weapon, and we just do away with the whole worm idea, but otherwise it makes enough sense, right? Even if the plan fails, which it probably will if the heroes are smart, all we've really lost is one piece of hardware that can simply blow itself up if compromised, and which definitely won't lead the Jedi right back to us. So anyway, the droid leads Obi-Wan right to Zam. Even if the assassination had gone off without a hitch, it should have relayed some kind of encrypted message or something to Zam and then self-destructed. There should be no reality where it ever returns to her, especially if there's a fucking person hanging off of it. And Zam, just a bit of advice for you, when you see a Jedi Knight being brought straight toward you, don't shoot the droid he's hanging on to, shoot him. You might think he's not likely to survive that fall, and in fairness, you're probably right. I'd argue it's kind of ridiculous that Obi-Wan did survive it, but I don't see why she would even take the chance. The Jedi are kind of legendary around the galaxy for having magical powers and being able to do all sorts of shit normal people can't, so I think a bullet to the chest is probably the best way to go. Also, I feel like some people are going to try to defend the fact that Obi-Wan survives this with some variation of the Jedi have super durability, which I actually have seen people use when defending moments like this, but in order for stakes to continue to exist in these films, I'm afraid you can't simply establish that Jedi can fall from tremendous heights without so much as a broken bone. So all the times Obi-Wan and Anakin do so during this chase are bullshit as far as I'm concerned, especially when Zam crash lands her speeder, and even if we were accepting that excuse here, that still doesn't apply to Zam, so I guess changelings also have super durability. But okay, so this assassination isn't going well. I don't see why they armed the droid with a pair of fucking worms. I don't know why the droid wasn't programmed to self-destruct once the worms were deposited, or in the event it was compromised, and I don't know why it led the Jedi back to Zam. Like, they literally have it lined up so perfectly. Neither of these people are directly suspected in the assassination attempts in any way, so once Padme is dead, they would get away with it scot-free. Zam is even a shapeshifter, so even if somehow her identity became known to the people investigating the matter, it's very unlikely they'd be able to find her. She's on a planet populated by like 1 trillion people, and she can change her appearance. Speaking of which, why isn't she doing that right now? The Jedi chase her into a nightclub, and she doesn't think to like alter her appearance and try to slip past them. I mean, nothing in the movie establishes she can also transform her clothes, and again, we're not accepting shit that was established in the Clone Wars, so I do not care at all that that's something apparently her species can do. That's fucking stupid, and the shapeshifting also just doesn't look the same as in Attack of the Clones, so I really just don't know what to make of that. So if Anakin got a good look at what she was wearing while chasing her, then maybe that makes it a little harder for her to just slide right past him, but also she's wearing a jacket and a helmet. You can just abandon abandon those in the bathroom, change into someone completely different looking, and at least fucking try to escape through the front entrance. That's a way better plan than trying to sneak up on Obi-Wan at the bar and fucking kill him. Besides, the only way I would even accept the line of thinking that she can't sneak out is if one or both of the Jedi were guarding the door, but they're not. Obi-Wan goes to the bar because he wants to bait her into attacking him, which she's apparently stupid enough to do, and Anakin goes around searching the crowd for her, so she could easily just slip out. And that's really dumb, because even when chasing a regular perp, you'd obviously want to guard the door. But that's especially true when your quarry is a shapeshifter, which they both know.
I think he is a she. And I think she's a changeling.
I don't understand why none of these characters are making any smart decisions. Okay, let's try this. Maybe the reason Obi-Wan came up with this stupid plan to lure her out was because he didn't think it'd be possible to catch her at the door if she's a shapeshifter. For that, they'd basically have to stop and interrogate everyone trying to exit the building, and they just don't have that kind of manpower. But that doesn't suddenly make this plan of theirs smart, or in any way a better alternative. Zam would have to be really stupid to fall for this bait, especially when they already baited her once and managed to actually catch on to her. And I'm sorry, but from a meta standpoint, I have absolutely no idea why Zam is a shapeshifter. What impact does that have on the narrative? Her very cool and unique ability never affects the story in any way. She doesn't use it to get away from the Jedi, nor do we ever see her use it in her assassination attempts, so why did George write that into the script? So nothing about this assassination attempt makes any sense, nothing about the subsequent chase makes any sense, and to cap it all off, they bring her outside and try to ask her who hired her for the job, but before she can get the words out, she's shot with a Camino saber dart by Jango. Actually, I say before she can get the words out, but she actually does manage to sputter out a few more. It's interesting to me how she was already prepared to sell Jango out, and then he quite literally murdered her to keep her quiet, and she chose in her dying words to curse him, rather than finish telling the Jedi the information she was already about to give them, which would greatly fuck over the guy who just betrayed her. Goodbye, Zam. You died the way you lived, being a fucking idiot. And Jango, what the fuck are you doing, buddy? Why would you shoot Zam with a dart that directly links back to Camino when you could have gotten the job done just as easily with any regular blaster rifle? Hell, I'd even question why not just hit her with some kind of explosive projectile that might also take out Obi-Wan and Anakin while he's at it. The only way this decision makes any sense is if Jango knows Dooku wants the Jedi to eventually find the clone army on Camino and is intentionally trying to lure them there. But we actually know that's not true for multiple reasons. A, he was clearly caught off guard later in the film when Obi-Wan did arrive on Camino and then immediately tries to make a break for Geonosis.
What is it, Dad?
Pack your things. We're leaving.
And I'm inclined to assume this reaction is genuine since Obi-Wan is no longer in the room, and I don't see why he'd be putting on a performance for Boba's sake. And B, that only makes sense if finding Camino is relatively easy for whatever Jedi is tasked with investigating the origins of this dart. But we know that's not the case because the analysis droids Obi-Wan consults aren't able to figure it out, and he has to go to some guy that he just happens to know working in a diner who happens to just know all sorts of general trivia about the galactic underworld. And some of you are probably saying, well, which is it, Sheev? Is it stupid of Jango to use a dart that can easily be traced back to him? Or is it convenient that Obi-Wan just happened to know someone who could tell him where it comes from, which Jango obviously couldn't have accounted for? Well, I mean, why not both? Because first and foremost, if there's even a remote chance the Jedi might be able to find Camino using the dart, then that's a very good reason not to use it when you have other weapons at your disposal. And it's just common sense to reduce the percentage to 0. But also, when I say it's convenient that Obi-Wan just happens to know a guy who has the exact obscure information he needs to push his investigation forward, I want to be clear that I have no problem believing the Jedi would have figured it out eventually. If not Obi-Wan, there'd surely be some other Jedi with criminal connections, and one of those connections is bound to have something useful to offer.
Hello in the cluster of stars from
У Леонида Андреевича бачок, брокколи, немного риса и фарш. Просто рассказывай, что ты ешь. Почему нервы? 30 секундочек, подожди. Можно да расскажу людям. Ешь. Извини.
It's mainly a matter of timing. An investigation that could have easily lasted several months or even years is instead being resolved within a calendar day because Obi-Wan, by sheer coincidence, is buddies with a guy who spent some time prospecting in a place near Kamino, a world that's far away from anything and everything in the galaxy and is by necessity very obscure. So if Jango wanted the Jedi to use the dart to find them, then I hope he was prepared to wait several months for that to pan out. Hell, maybe that's why he was so surprised when Obi-Wan turned up when he did. But I think this is kind of a moot point anyway, because not only do I just not believe Jango was in the know about the plan any further than he needs to be, which is something we're gonna get into later, but it's also completely unnecessary as a move. If Palpatine and Dooku want the Jedi to find Kamino, they can easily just have the Kaminoans reach out to them directly. They are making an army for the Republic and haven't heard from them in 10 years. It's easy enough to just have them call the Chancellor's office and be like, hey, is this still happening? Your army's ready. Although I guess that also raises the question of if the Kaminoans are in on the plan and to what extent, but I don't actually know if it changes much of the plot either way if they do, so I'm not trying to get into that right now. For the time being, I'd like to keep on this line of thinking about how the villains expect the heroes to learn the information necessary for the war to begin in the time frame that they need to for everything to play out the way Palpatine wants. Like I already said, I think it makes enough sense that they can just have the Kaminoans reach out to the Republic, and that can be how the army is discovered. But another thing that's worth considering is, how are the Jedi meant to learn about the droid factory, and the fact that several commercial and political figures are gathering on Geonosis to discuss terms with Count Dooku? That needs to happen to push the senators over the edge and force them to vote in favor of granting Palpatine emergency wartime powers and pass the military creation bill. So how do the Sith hope to have that happen? Well, I suppose the simplest way to facilitate that would be to simply have the Jedi investigate Dooku for the assassination attempts on Padme. I mean, again, she already accused him, so whether or not she actually dies, that would make him a suspect and give the Jedi cause to look into his activities. Palpatine might be able to slip them a lead that he's on Geonosis, the same way he helps them find Grievous on Utapau in episode 3.
Palpatine thinks General Grievous is on Utapau. A partial message was intercepted in a diplomatic packet from the chairman of Utapau.
And then that can be how they find out about the army. I suppose if we're going with that, then that's yet another knock against the theory that Dooku was trying to assassinate Padme without incriminating himself, so yeah, those worms really just don't make any sense. As it stands in the movie, though, what happens is Obi-Wan finds Kamino thanks to a mix of Jango's stupidity and massive convenience that Obi-Wan knows a guy who can point him in the right direction. And from there, he manages to land a tracker on Jango's ship before he can make it off the landing platform. And he only manages to do that because he somehow survives a bunch of bullshit that shouldn't have been possible during their fight. So I guess what I'm getting at here is I think it makes enough sense that Palpatine would probably have had ways of getting the Jedi where they needed to go regardless of how things play out, but it's still interesting to me that through sheer happenstance, Obi-Wan continues to just luck his way through the plot in ways that fit perfectly within Palpatine's timeline. It just makes him seem like less of a conniving genius and more like his plans only work because fate seems to have willed it so.
Was the will of the Force.
Fuck off! Also, I'd like to believe Obi-Wan discovering the army was enough to cause mass hysteria in the Senate and cause them to vote in favor of the army. Otherwise, a good deal of Palpatine's plan suddenly rests on Jar Jar swaying the undecided voters, and I don't know how to feel about that. I don't understand why Padme's even chosen Jar Jar as a representative in the first place. Like, I get that he's her friend and he helped save the day in the last movie. I also get that following the peace between the Naboo and the Gungans, having a Gungan representative in your cabinet is a smart move. But Jar Jar isn't a politician, and he's not particularly smart. I don't see why she would ever trust him with anything under normal circumstances, let alone on something this important. The fact that he was appointed to this position gave him the authority to speak to the Senate with what was essentially Padme's voice. Yeah, he was saying things that she would never have wanted, which makes him a bad representative. This is all your fault, Padme. You should have known better.
You've got to do better, Senator.
So now I think we should get into the whole clone conspiracy, because that's the backbone of the entire plot, and it doesn't make any sense. This is going to be the most difficult one to unravel, I think, because it's so confusing and convoluted that it's really hard to tell what any of the characters actually know by the end. It's especially hard for the audience to try to keep track of it all, and I'm speaking as someone who's watched this movie countless times over the last 22 years and still has trouble working it all out. Starting from the beginning, after the rather embarrassing attempts at assassinating Padme, Obi-Wan is assigned to conduct an investigation on the matter while Anakin takes her into hiding and chills out on Naboo. One of the first things Obi-Wan discovers once Dexter tells him about Kamino is that Kamino doesn't exist anywhere in Jedi record, despite their maps showing indications of a surrounding gravitational pull where the planet ought to be, and this leads him and Yoda to conclude that it was erased by a fellow Jedi. Now, of course, Dooku was a Jedi, as this film establishes many times, so I suppose that could lead them to the conclusion that he was the one who did it, and we're gonna get into what evidence the Jedi might have to suspect Dooku of commissioning the clones later, but I suppose it's just as easily likely they assume Sifo Dyas did it. I mean, we know Sifo Dyas was a real Jedi who existed and has been presumed dead for the last 10 years because Obi-Wan acknowledges him by name.
I'm sorry, Master...
Jedi Master Sifo Dyas is still a leading member of the Jedi Council, is he not?
Master Sifo Dyas was killed almost 10 years ago.
And this isn't just him putting on an act for the Kaminoans, like when he feigns knowledge about the army, because he does the same thing with Yoda and Windu later, and they also acknowledge him.
They say Master Sifo Dyas placed an order for a clone army at the request of the Senate almost 10 years ago. I was under the impression he was killed before at the request of the Senate. Almost 10 years ago. I was under the impression he was killed before that.
Interesting, by the way, that Obi-Wan worded it that way. It suggests Sifo Dyas was killed, but the films tell us nothing more about the nature of his death, and it's all shrouded in vagaries. Anyway, Obi-Wan then goes to Kamino and is shocked to discover that they were expecting him, having apparently spent the last 10 years working on an army for the Republic that was ordered by a Jedi Council member.
Please tell your master, Sifo Dyas, that his order will be met on time.
After being given a tour of the facility and seeing the clones for himself, Obi-Wan gets introduced to Jango Fett and learns quite a few interesting things. First of all, he confirms without question that Jango is indeed the bounty hunter who hired Zam for the assassination job, because Jango didn't bother hiding his armor at all, and since he didn't decide to kill Obi-Wan and Anakin along with Zam, they were both able to see him taking off in it after killing her. Nice one, Jango. The other thing Obi-Wan learns when he asks him if he's met Sifo Dyas is that Jango was recruited for the job by a man called Tyrannus on one of the moons of Bogdan, which we later discover is the Sith name for Count Dooku.
I was recruited by a man called Tyrannus on one of the moons of Bogdan.
Welcome home, Lord Tyrannus.
But of course, Obi-Wan has no way of knowing that, and would most likely assume Tyrannus is the code name of Sifo Dyas, since he'd ordered the army without the permission of the Jedi, as Obi-Wan later learns when conferring with Mason Yoda. They order him to take Jango in so they can interrogate him at the Jedi Temple, but he catches Jango as he's hastily trying to get out, they fight, and the bounty hunter escapes. In a last-ditch effort, Obi-Wan lands a tracking beacon on the Slave One and follows it to Geonosis, where he discovers Dooku and the Separatists gathering, along with the droid army. From there, Obi-Wan manages to get a message to Anakin and the rest of the Jedi about what he's discovered before being captured, and in the conversation he has with Dooku, he learns this.
What if I told you that the Republic was now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith? Hundreds of senators are now under the influence of a Sith Lord called Darth Sidious. The Viceroy of the Trade Federation was once in league with this Darth Sidious, but he was betrayed 10 years ago by the Dark Lord.
There's a lot to unpack with all this, but now that it's all laid out, let's review what the Jedi know by the end of the film. I suppose the biggest thing that a lot of people tend to note is the fact that Jango Fett is now confirmed to be linked to the assassination attempts on Padme, the Clone Army, and Count Dooku. So that's a bit of an immediate red flag that the Jedi really should have picked up on, huh? I'm not saying Jango working for Dooku is of itself a dead giveaway. He is, after all, a bounty hunter, and his allegiance isn't really to any one faction. Just because he's working for Dooku here doesn't necessarily mean Dooku has any connection to the clones, right? But it's really the convenient timing of it all that you'd think would raise a few eyebrows. I mean, okay, Padme is the leader of the movement to stop the creation of the clone army, and she's just named Dooku as the one behind her assassination attempts. Her reason seeming to be that he wants this war to start, and the only way that happens is if the Senate votes to greenlight the army. And wouldn't you know it, the very same bounty hunter hired for this job is also being employed by the Kaminoans to create said army for the Republic, right when they're about to need one. And if there was any doubt before that Jango was working on behalf of Dooku to kill Padme, the fact that he flees right to Geonosis when Obi-Wan finds him and is then seen working for Dooku at the arena, I mean, that's kind of the nail on the coffin, right? Well, I suppose that does, to an extent, come down to what the Jedi believe about Dooku by the end of the film as well, doesn't it? This plays into a larger discussion that I want to get into, actually, and I guess now's the perfect time to do it. Just a bit ago, I played the clip of Dooku laying out to Obi-Wan basically everything he could ever hope to know about the Sith and what they're doing. He tells him about the name Darth Sidious, he tells him about the fact that he was working with Newt Gunray during the Naboo crisis, and he tells him that the Dark Lord is currently in control of the entire Galactic Republic. Many are quick to criticize this scene because, I mean, yeah, why would Dooku tell a Jedi Knight all that sensitive information? Sure, maybe he really does want Obi-Wan to join his cause, but if Obi-Wan goes over to his side on the basis that he wants to destroy the Sith only to find out Dooku is working for the Sith, then how exactly does he expect that to go? Well, I think the obvious answer to this is that Dooku doesn't really expect Obi-Wan to join him, but even if he does, he's obviously not going to tell him that he actually serves the Sith, which then begs the question, do the Jedi know Count Dooku is a Sith? You might be saying, well, of course they do. They say as much in Revenge of the Sith.
Get help, you're no match for him. He's a Sith Lord.
Chancellor Palpatine, Sith Lords are our speciality.
And the Clone Wars makes it out as though his status as a Sith Lord is common knowledge. Even Dooku admits it in front of Anakin.
The Sith control everything.
But hold on there, Jimbo. Let's think about this for a moment. Just based on Attack of the Clones, I don't Sith Lord is common knowledge. Even Dooku admits it in front of Anakin. Wars makes it out as though his status as a Sith Lord is common knowledge. Even Dooku admits it in front of Anakin.
The Sith control everything.
But hold on there, Jimbo. Let's think about this for a moment. Just based on Attack of the Clones, I don't want you to factor any other source of information here. Do the Jedi have enough reason to conclude that? Having a red lightsaber doesn't automatically make you a Sith, nor does having Force lightning. And I know some of you might try to counter that this level of nuance wasn't really a factor when George was writing these movies, and that I'm using information from established lore after the fact to come to that conclusion, but I don't think I am. Why would George have Dooku tell him all that unless he had it in mind that Dooku using a red lightsaber and throwing around Force lightning didn't necessarily mean anything in the eyes of the Jedi, beyond that he's given into the dark side, which isn't the same thing as being a Sith. So that's the interesting thing. I think Dooku telling him this should have theoretically had the exact desired effect. Obi-Wan might or might not believe this himself, but he's still gonna go back and report this to the Council, provided he survives his execution, and then at that point this information is out there. He's managed to create a divide between the Jedi and the Senate, because if there's even a small chance that Dooku was telling the truth, that puts into question everything the Jedi believe about the government to which they're sworn to protect. If an evil so terrible as the Sith were able to get into the very heart of the Republic and take control of its festering corruption, then is it a Republic deserving of saving? Naturally from this, there'd be a lot of Jedi thinking along these lines who might second guess their role in the war. Many would choose to sit it out. Many would defect to Dooku's side. Many might even stay with the Republic for the sole purpose of sabotaging the war effort for the Separatists. There's any number of possibilities. And keep in mind that Dooku is a former Jedi Master himself, who has the respect and admiration of many of his colleagues, even those in the highest ranks of the Order.
He is a political idealist, not a murderer.
You know, milady, Count Dooku.
Order.
He is a political idealist, not a murderer.
You know, milady, Count Dooku was once a Jedi. He couldn't assassinate anyone. It's not in his character.
This isn't just some random guy saying all this to make the Republic look bad. This is a man who spent decades of his life fighting for the common good, basically declaring that he wants to save the galaxy from their ancient enemy. Of course a lot of the Jedi are going to listen to him, and from that comes a natural divide in the Order. You might say I'm pulling all this out of my ass, but at the end of the film, Obi-Wan, Windu, and Yoda all discuss it, and while Yoda is quick to dismiss Dooku's words as lies meant to sow division, Windu at least it. And while Yoda is quick to dismiss Dooku's words as lies meant to sow division, Windu at least keeps an open mind about it and says they should keep a closer eye on the Senate, which is something that obviously gets carried through in the next film. So I definitely think that was the intention of the writer. I guess the problem is,
Force is with us, Master Sidious.
Welcome.
The Force is with us, Master Sidious.
Welcome home, Lord Tyrannus. You have done well.
I have good news for you, my lord. The war has begun.
Excellent. Everything is going as planned.
Do you believe what Count Dooku said about Sidious controlling the Senate? It doesn't feel right.
Joined the dark side, Dooku has. Lies, deceit. Creating mistrust are his ways now.
Nevertheless, I feel we should keep a closer eye on the Senate.
I agree.
Where is your apprentice?
On his way to Naboo, escorting Senator Amidala home. I have to admit that without the clones, it would not have been a victory.
Victory? Victory, you say? Master Obi-Wan, not victory. The shroud of the dark side has fallen. Begun. The Clone War has. Dark side, not victory. The shroud of the dark side has fallen. Begun. The Clone War has.
Мы встретились с тобой, когда я был один. Меня свели с ума бездонные глаза. Не думал, не гадал, никак не ожидал, что первая любовь ко мне вернется вновь. Родная, имя твое я люблю, все звезды неба тебе подарю. Любовь я больше таить не могу, и песню эту тебе подарю. Ты будешь в жизни лишь только моей, о ком-то думать, смотри, мне не смей. И даже если нагрянет зима, не беда. Расстались мы с тобой, Когда пришла зима, я долго тосковал, но ты была с другим. Я ждал и горевал, тебе не забывал. И встретились опять, когда пришла весна. Родная, имя твое я люблю, все звезды неба тебе подарю. Любовь я больше таить не могу, и песню эту тебе подарю. Ты будешь в жизни лишь только моей, о ком-то думать, смотри, мне не смей. И даже если нагрянет зима, не беда. Ты будешь в жизни лишь только моей, о ком-то думать, смотри, мне не смей. И даже если нагрянет зима, не беда. Давай не будем мы друг другу досаждать, ведь знаешь, что меня ты будешь вспоминать, ты будешь тосковать и встречи нашей ждать. И тоже так же я, поверь, люблю тебя. Родная, имя твое я люблю, все звезды неба тебе подарю. Любовь я больше таить не могу, и песню эту тебе подарю. Ты будешь в жизни лишь только моей, о ком-то думать, смотри, мне не смей. И даже если нагрянет зима, не беда. Родная, имя твое я люблю, все звезды неба тебе подарю. Любовь я больше таить не могу, и песню эту тебе подарю. Смотри, мне не смей. И даже если нагрянет зима, не беда, не беда, не беда. Просто я никогда не буду рядом. Просто я никогда не буду в сердце. Просто знай, никогда не буду прежним. Просто я никогда не буду, никогда не буду. Если ты родился в аду, никогда не гуляю ограды. Ведь увидев рай за забором, пуповина не станет короче. За клыки не влюбляйся в вампира, даже если они красивы. Никогда не зови его в гости, ведь тебе пригодятся силы. Вместе с мясом вырвать цепи, кровоточить, оставить звенья, распрощаться с адом и раем. Впредь здороваться только за деньги, впредь здороваться только за деньги, впредь здороваться только за деньги, впредь здороваться. Рэперы штамповки носят шмотки, как один. Отправить это в клубы жопы будут трясти. Там мы все в расцвете сил, но еще есть куда цвести. У меня есть суперспособность превращать свою кровь в акрил. У нас закончилась текила, и мы перешли на джин. Если я двину в твой город, то он станет моим. Мы катаем по городу свободно сверху вниз. Нас не заменить, как фёрги, байк твист. Да мы как туристы, тут у нас есть мир и виза. На меня завозят, прохожу с ней пару месяцев. Да мы как туристы, тут у нас есть мир и виза. На меня завозят, прохожу с ней пару месяцев. Там где-то не видашь, и текилы целая пинта. Я прыгаю в угол, встречаю тех, не любят бить. Да не эйса проки, но я нуждаюсь в девчонке, как Рири. Все флантажки темные, как морфин, и не то, что киллер. Ее сад так громит, он как целый лонговый пик. Я все еще не знаю, мальчик снайкнул в моей квартире. Все, что нельзя, мы бандитируем. Мальчик снайкнул в моей квартире. Все, что нельзя, мы бандитируем. У нас закончилась текила, и мы перешли на джин. Если я двину в твой город, то он станет моим. Мы катаем по городу свободно сверху вниз. Нас не заменить, как фёрги, байк и твист. Да мы как юристы, тут у нас есть мир и виза. На меня завозят, прохожу с ней пару месяцев. Да мы как туристы, тут у нас есть мир и виза. На меня завозят, прохожу с ней пару месяцев. Я получаю бабки, я не всех печатаю. Твои девки хотел нас выбросить, чтобы заправить. Я очень быстро схожу с ума, забираю. Позвони мне через банкомат, мой персонаж не играет. Там мне пичка с инсты, она меня тоже захватывает. Если я стильно развит, считай, я торгую килограммами. Считай, я торгую килограммами. Если я сильно развит, считай, ванчу килограммами.
Бля, короче, я посмотрел, у этого пидораса самый как бы норм ценник, вот 1400. Нашел еще за двушку, но новый типа 2200 стоит.
by the void.
Sargeras plunged his colossal blade into our world. Crucial events were set in motion. Magni Bronzebeard heard the cries of Azeroth, giving up everything to answer her call.
Since being wounded by the Mad Titan, Azeroth has been crying out in pain.
As her dutiful speaker, he rallied the champions to her aid, and ultimately to confront the return of the old god, N'Zoth. It was during this conflict that Xal'atath, a mysterious entity of the Void, made a deal with N'Zoth, freeing her from the cursed blade that bound her essence within.
Honor our bargain. Free me to find my own fate.
After she vanished into the darkness, N'Zoth was confronted by the mortal champions and destroyed, ending the old god's reign of terror. But they were not the only malevolent force with its eyes set on Azeroth. For soon, the sky was sundered, the Shadowlands split open, and our heroes were pulled into the realm of death itself.
Go, champion! Go!
It was there that Anduin Wrynn endured the worst. Captured, tortured, and through dark domination magics, forced to commit terrible acts against his will.
I'm afraid that if I call on the light, it won't answer.
Scarred and shaken by his experience, he vanished, his whereabouts unknown. After the threat of the Shadowlands had been quelled, the dragons of Azeroth returned to their ancestral homeland. It was here that the primal dragon, Iridikron, broke free of his prison, and in pursuit of the primal dragon, Iridikron, broke free of his prison, and in pursuit of vengeance upon the Titans who he felt had stolen our world, he secured an ancient, powerful artifact, the Dark Heart.
When the Titans come to reclaim their prize, I will be waiting.
As word of this new threat started to spread, people began experiencing strange visions. The Radiant Song
is being heard all across Azeroth. The Council doesn't know what to make of it.
It was then that Ilaria Windrunner, a deadly huntress who had harnessed the powers of the Void as a weapon against the darkness, was summoned to investigate.
My people are no strangers to voices from below, but this radiant song is different.
It's being heard all across Azeroth. The Council doesn't know what to make of it.
There must be someone who does. I'll let you know what I find.
Ilaria. It's been too long, old friend.
Good to see you, Khadgar. Doing well?
As well as can be expected. How's the family?
I haven't... It's better if I keep my distance.
Of course. The Void. That would be... Actually, your connection to the Void is why I asked you here. We still don't know what this Dark Heart relic is capable of, but we do know it's in the hands of someone called the Harbinger. Who they are and what they intend to do remains a mystery, which is why I need your help.
To hunt down a dangerous foe we know nothing about. Honestly, I could use the distraction.
Same old Ilaria. Void or no void. I didn't mean to,
See you soon, Khadgar.
Why she calls herself the Heart. So it is Xal'atath who has claimed the Dark Heart. I understand now why she calls herself the Harbinger.
I've had enough riddles for one day.
The radiant visions you spoke of are the very same my people had, before our world was consumed by the Void Lord Dimensius.
What? You don't think... Could Xalatath be seeking that same fate for Azeroth?
I fear that is precisely what she intends. You must find a way to stop her.
Me? Look, she knew exactly how to hurt me. I don't think I'm the one to...
Yes, she knew your greatest fear is endangering your family. But you must let go of that fear. Embrace who you truly are.
I know who I am.
Do you? You are unbalanced. You must master your unique nature, Alaria. If you cannot, then Azeroth is already doomed.
Once more, Dalaran is called to the aid of our world. Magni?
Azeroth showed me a vision of a city in flames in the ancient lands of Kaz Algar. Her voice was desperate. We must act quickly.
Archmage Drendon has proposed, and the Council agrees, that we bring the full force of Dalaran to this Kaz Algar. Make ready, our people, and prepare the city for teleportation. Whatever lies ahead, we will face it together.
It's even more amazing than I'd imagined. But it's even more amazing than I'd imagined. But my visions were of fire and war.
Something's wrong. I need to find Khadgar. Drendon. Where's the rest of the council?
Drendon's been dead for
years. All this time. And you never once sensed my presence. Oh,
Lucas just decided not to go through with it when writing episode 3, and for the life of me, I seriously can't figure out why. At first I thought it was a matter of time management. Revenge of the Sith is a big movie with a lot of ground to cover, so it makes sense you'd want to kill Dooku off early so you could start setting the stage for Palpatine's rise to power and the birth of Darth Vader. But then I remembered General Grievous exists. The character was invented for Revenge of the Sith. And yes, I know technically he first appeared in the Clone Wars cartoon in 2003. You're all very knowledgeable. Thank you for your comments. But the only reason he was even put into that show was because George was planning for him to have a major role in the third film. He'd conceptualized a domineering alien cyborg to serve as the leader of the droid army. And in Revenge of the Sith, he's treated as basically the big bad of the Separatists after Dooku dies. Like, oh man, if only we could just catch Grievous, then we could end the war. Cut off the head and the snake dies, that sort of thing. Which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense considering Grievous is just an army general. Like, sure, he's the leader of the whole army, but he's not any kind of politician. Surely there's other Separatist figureheads who would outrank him in the event of Dooku's death, right? Well, either way, I think my solution to this so that you can give Dooku a bigger role is to just cut Grievous from the film entirely. That way you can take the time to develop these concepts I just went over while saving time and being efficient with how many characters you use. And, I don't know, save Grievous for one of the animated shows or something. But a potential hurdle to this solution is that Dooku's death being at the beginning of the movie serves the narrative in two ways that you really can't do without. Firstly, it showcases how much more powerful Obi-Wan and especially Anakin have become in the years since Attack of the Clones. Where in the last movie he handed them both of their asses, in this one Anakin beats Dooku almost casually. And secondly, you really do need this moment to show just how deeply Anakin has fallen already so that his full transition later into the dark side is more believable. You need to show us just how much sway Palpatine's transition later into the dark side is more believable. You need to show us just how much sway Palpatine's words have over him and how willing he is to just straight up execute an unarmed prisoner, and trying to move that to anywhere later in the movie doesn't really work. Especially if he's taking over Grievous's role, because the whole point of that is to get Obi-Wan off Coruscant so that Anakin is all alone and easy for Palpatine to get his hooks in. So at that point, you can't really have the payoff of him killing Dooku, can you? But I think I have a workaround. Introduce a new character. Oh, hi, Ventress. This would actually work to fix a few things. Let me cook. If Ventress were to be introduced in episode 2, which, by the way, it's well documented that concepts for her were already being drawn up as a potential Sith character before they eventually settled on Dooku, so I don't want to hear anyone say I'm arguing from hindsight here. If they were to introduce Ventress here, then you could just have her be the one who rinses Obi-Wan and cuts off Anakin's arm. Then she could be the one who they fight when rescuing the Chancellor and could be the one Anakin beheads, while Dooku ends up getting away and fleeing to Utapau. I even think you could still have Anakin be the one to kill Dooku in this version. They would just have to change up the Utapau fight a little bit, but even then, I think this also serves to bolster the themes. In episode 3, Anakin wants to go on the mission to catch Grievous, but the Jedi Council don't want him to go because they don't trust him, and they want him to spy on the Chancellor, so Obi-Wan goes instead. If Obi-Wan were to have failed the assignment, however, then that would only add to Anakin's increasing frustrations that the Jedi are holding him back and underestimating his talents. And then, while you're playing into that, you have Dooku get away with the rest of the Separatist leaders to Mustafar. With Dooku still alive, that means the war technically isn't over, and that, coupled with the fact that this version of the story also has a lot of Jedi defecting or abstaining from the war, is going to make it a much easier sell for Palpatine to declare the Jedi as traitors and argue that they need to transition into a more secure power base in order to ensure security and stability for all. Then, when Anakin gets sent to Mustafar to wipe out the remaining Separatists, that can be when he faces off against Dooku, and they could end it with a direct parallel to the Luke and Vader fight in Return of the Jedi, where this time it's Anakin standing over a crippled Dooku, but unlike Luke, he doesn't hesitate the Jedi, where this time it's Anakin standing over a crippled Dooku, but unlike Luke, he doesn't hesitate to finish the job. I think this is a scene that could work, provided Dooku doesn't understand that Anakin is doing this on behalf of Sidious and just assumes he's still a Jedi, because otherwise I guess you could argue that he should have pointed out to Anakin that Palpatine is ultimately going to betray him too, but then again, that problem exists in the actual movie anyway, so whatever. I understand I'm getting a bit carried away with this rewrite, and I do apologize for that, but it's worth getting into because this is all stuff that Attack of the Clones would have had to lay the groundwork for so that it could be properly paid off in Revenge of the Sith. And like I said, there are other things I think introducing Ventress would accomplish that are more directly centered around episode 2. For one thing, you could rework it so that Ventress is the one in charge of the assassination attempts on Padme, and you basically just combine Jango and Zam into one character. And don't make him Jango Fett. We don't need an origin story for Boba. It completely takes away from the mystery of his character and makes the universe feel so much smaller. In this version of the story, Jango is still the bounty hunter hired for the clone army, and and he's the one that ends up being chased by Anakin and Obi-Wan after the assassination attempt fails. Then, like Zam, he gets killed by Ventress before he can give any information to the Jedi, and that gets rid of the stupidity of him shooting Zam with the Kamino saber dart and leading the Jedi right to him. The Jedi could just find them on his body and use them to trace back to Kamino, and the plot stays the exact same. All you need from there is for Obi-Wan to go from Kamino to Geonosis, but that's easy enough. Just have Ventress follow Obi-Wan to Kamino, thinking he's leading her to Padme, and then when she realizes where she actually is, have them get in a fight, she escapes, and he puts the tracker on her ship, just like with Jango. This fixes so many problems because now there's no link at all between the clones and Dooku from the Jedi's perspectives. Obi-Wan wouldn't have any reason to assume Ventress was on Kamino for any reason other than that she was following him. It allows the parts of the plot that make sense to remain relatively the same, and it introduces a shit ton of new things that add to the overall narrative and bolster what George was clearly going for with these movies.
It's big thighs. Okay, we'll try some of that. Huge thighs. We got our Kermit thighs.
I've always said the prequel...
Big thighs. Okay, we'll try some of that. Huge thighs. We got our Kermit thighs.
I've always said the prequels have a lot of good ideas in them, and all they really needed were a couple more redrafts, and for George to have a few other people to bounce his ideas off of. Everything I've just laid out for you, Jolly and I came up with after just a couple hours of brainstorming. But unfortunately, one of George's biggest flaws that seriously serve as a detriment to these films is his belief that he has to do everything himself, and he should be the only one with any kind of creative control. But art is by nature a collaborative effort, and if you try to go at it alone, you're inevitably going to trip over yourself. But anyway, that's enough about hypotheticals and rewrites. The reason I felt this was all worth going over is that if the Jedi do know Dooku is a Sith, then that makes everything so much worse, because as I'm about to go over, the Jedi have to be really stupid to not figure out Dooku had a hand in the creation of the clones, and if he's a Sith Lord, then, well, connect the dots. Now, we went over already how some of the things Dooku did might be easily explained as the work of Sifo Dyas, as far as the Jedi are aware. Stuff like erasing Kamino from the archives, ordering the army, and maybe even using the name Tyrannus when recruiting Jango. But there are certain things that Sifo Dyas couldn't possibly have done, or at least not alone. And I think the biggest one here is, who paid for this army, exactly? Sifo Dyas was a Jedi Council member. He wasn't some wealthy politician or some kind of multi-trillionaire CEO of a massive corporation, which he would basically have to be for the kind of funding it takes to produce an army of clones. And it's not like he could have stolen that money from the Jedi Treasury or somehow from the Republic. Either, because again, that amount of money isn't just going to get moved without someone noticing. This implies that Sifo Dyas must have had some mysterious third party serving as a benefactor. Maybe this Tyrannus, or maybe someone else entirely. And, well, Dooku has that kind of money, and at the very least, Padme was already set on the notion that he's secretly trying to get this war started. Sure, the Jedi don't initially believe her, but by the end of the film, they're obviously going to be singing a different tune. But that on its own isn't enough, I think. It's one thing for Dooku to want the Republic to greenlight an army so that he he can make the plausible defense that going to war against them is an act of self-defense, and another entirely to want them to just have one ready to go at a moment's notice once the war has begun. The only way that makes any sense is if he created the army and is therefore secretly in control of it, and suddenly his connection to Jango and Jango's connection to Padme's assassination attempts are lining up a little too well. So it's already a bit weird that the Jedi don't piece that together. The senator most prominently advocating against forming an army is suddenly the subject of multiple assassination attempts by a man who's associated both with the leader of the opposition, who secretly wants the war to start, and with the people currently working on the dubiously funded army that are set to conveniently be unveiled right around the time the bill is pushed. But if the Jedi know Dooku is a Sith, then that adds even more context to all this. That confirms for them that the Sith are behind the whole war and are not so secretly in control of both armies fighting in it, with the Jedi right in the thick of it all. The characters have all these pieces right in front of them that are practically already in place, and they never figure any of it out, because even they got confused by the plot of this movie. This is what I mean when I say the clone conspiracy plot doesn't make any sense and that it's hard to figure out what the characters do and don't know by the end. Because the answers are really obvious, and these characters are supposed to have at least average levels of intelligence. People always like to say I'm arguing from hindsight, or that because I have access to information that the characters don't, that makes it unfair of me to act like I know better than them. But I kinda just don't buy that. We're just audience members. We might be invested in the story, but ultimately there are no stakes to our personal lives if things go badly for the characters. At the end, the credits will roll, the lights will come up, and we can all go home and forget about what we just watched. But the characters in the movie don't have that luxury. They're in it. They have to actually spend time thinking about all the things they learn in the story. And I'm sorry, if the Jedi actually did seriously contemplate all the information they had at their disposal, they should have figured it out. They just should have. But there's a lot more to talk about with this movie, and I don't want to spend all day talking about the clone conspiracy, so let's not waste any more time. While Obi-Wan is off doing all that, Anakin has been assigned to protect Padme. And something I feel is worth noting is how the Jedi Council go about making the decision to assign Anakin to this task. In my Clone Wars video, I mentioned how the Council were always hesitant to trust Anakin, and so I thought it was a bit weird how they were so quick to promote him to the rank of Jedi Knight so shortly after Attack of the Clones, even with a war on and them being desperate. But I was actually misremembering. It's a commonly cited thing with the prequels how the Jedi, namely personified by Mace Windu, don't really trust Anakin.
I don't trust him.
See? But actually, in Episode 2, it's really only Obi-Wan who casts doubts about Anakin. The rest of the Jedi are in Episode personified by Mace Windu don't really trust Anakin.
I don't trust him.
See? But actually, in Episode 2, it's really only Obi-Wan who casts doubts about Anakin. The rest of the Jedi are perfectly happy to see him actually progress and do who cast doubts about Anakin. The rest of the Jedi are perfectly happy to see him actually progress and do his thing.
I am concerned for my Padawan. He is not ready to be given this assignment on his own yet.
The Council is confident in its decision, Obi-Wan.
The boy has exceptional skills.
Now, from a character perspective, I actually think it makes sense that Obi-Wan feels this way. He was still a Padawan himself when Qui-Gon found Anakin and only barely ready to become a Jedi Knight, let alone take on his own Padawan, and especially one as important as this one. So, as a result, he sort of overcorrected and kept Anakin on a leash that's way too short. Every conversation inevitably becomes a stern lecture. Every little mistake Anakin makes gets him chastised. Obi-Wan is trying to act like what he thinks a Jedi Master ought to act like, but he doesn't really know what that means because his own master often went against the grain, and Obi-Wan never really had a chance to figure it out for himself before having an apprentice thrust upon him unexpectedly. This has led to a strained and frustrated dynamic between the two, especially on Anakin's part, since all he's ever done is try to live up to Obi-Wan's example, and it never seems to be enough. You get the distinct impression that Anakin doesn't normally do things like talk back to Obi-Wan, which is why when he actually does in front of Padme, Obi-Wan seems genuinely surprised.
And you will pay attention to my lead. Why? What?
And this tells us that the sort of bratty, childish behavior we see from Anakin is a relatively new thing that he's letting out, partially to try to impress Padme, but partially because he feels like he finally has the freedom to do so. And something I feel a lot of people misunderstand about this movie is Obi-Wan's character. Because yes, he does often chastise Anakin for being brash or impulsive, but then he'll turn around and do the same kind of thing.
If you'll excuse me, I hate it when he does that.
I've seen so many people point out this hypocrisy as a mark against the film when, like, no, that's the point. Even in the scene where he's telling Yoda and Windu that he doesn't think Anakin is ready for this assignment, Yoda passive-aggressively points out how Obi-Wan isn't as different from Anakin as he likes to pretend.
His abilities have made him, well, arrogant.
A flaw more and more common among Jedi. Too sure of themselves they are. Even the older,
more experienced ones.
This is absolutely intentional on George's part, and it's in line with the OT.
You are reckless.
So was I, if you remember.
This is why I actually think it makes sense that Obi-Wan is willing to use Padme as bait to catch the assassins, even though he'd never admit it. He voices his protest to the plan, but I don't see him putting a stop to it. The plan is still stupid, though. That part Obi-Wan should not have been cool with. But anyway, from the perspective of the Jedi Council, Anakin is basically an honor student. I mean, again, he's basically that way by necessity, because he's so starved for actual praise and recognition by his master, and he never gets any. The best he can get is a sort of backhanded compliment that serves to belittle him as much as praise him.
Aim right above the fuel cells. Good call, my young Padawan.
You can tell just by the change in Anakin's expression here that the use of the word young really gets to him.
We will not exceed our... mandate, my young Padawan learner.
Only in your mind, my very young apprentice.
So yeah, I actually think it makes sense that the Council are willing to trust Anakin with this assignment, because as they see it, he's a good dude who Obi-Wan is only restricting at this point. Plus, they still seem to believe because... So yeah, I actually think it makes sense that the Council are willing to trust Anakin with this assignment, because as they see it, he's a good dude who Obi-Wan is only restricting at this point. Plus, they still seem to believe he's the chosen one.
Remember, Obi-Wan, if the prophecy is true, your apprentice is the only one who can bring the Force back into balance.
I suppose if anything, I'd like to know more about what exactly changed in those 3 years between films that got Windu to completely flip his position on the subject. But then again, it's probably mainly to do with how close he's become with the Chancellor, who they've also grown to not trust. But now for my criticism of this. They're right to think Obi-Wan is holding Anakin back and that he just needs to put a little trust in him, but Obi-Wan also has very good reason to be concerned about this move. Anakin was just telling Obi-Wan last night about how much being around Padme is messing with him.
Just being around her again is intoxicating.
He knows Anakin has long since struggled with attachments in his past, and that was one of the major reasons the Jedi didn't want to train him initially. And Padme is a significant figure of affection from Anakin's life that he most certainly does not need to be tempted by. If Obi-Wan raised this objection to the Council and they decided to give Anakin the assignment anyway as a test to see how he would fare under these conditions, I'd be fine with that. But the problem is, Obi-Wan never does. The reasons he gives the Jedi for why he doesn't think Anakin is ready are unhelpfully vague and make it easier for Yoda and Windu to dismiss him as being overbearing. Also, for those of you who are about to bring it up in the comments, I know he actually does mention it in a deleted scene.
Master, we should not have been given this assignment. I fear Anakin will not be able to protect the Senator. He has an emotional connection with her. It's been there since he was a boy. Now he's confused, distracted.
But I consider deleted scenes to be dubiously canon at best, especially considering this one has the characters repeat lines from the other scene.
I'm concerned for my Padawan. He is not ready to be on his own.
If the prophecy is true, he is the one who will bring balance to the Force.
So unless Obi-Wan and Windu are just trying to one-up each other in redundancy, I'm inclined to believe this didn't happen. But either way, they send Anakin on the mission, and that's where the B-plot kicks in. The notorious romance between Anakin and Padme that this movie tries to build up, which will become integral to the overarching storyline of Darth Vader's entire character. There are multiple times in the behind-the-scenes where they refer to this movie as a love story.
This one, it's a much more condensed love story.
Episode 2 is George's first real romance movie. It's this love story between Anakin Skywalker and Senator Amidala.
And even though it's primarily a mystery and a love story.
So in many ways, this plotline is the centerpiece of the whole film, if not the entire trilogy. And it's very bad. And okay, I can already hear it being shouted at me before I even begin to make the point, so let's address this. A lot of the criticisms toward these scenes stem from the fact that the dialogue is rather cringe.
Believe me, I wish that I could just wish away my feelings.
My goodness, you've grown.
So have you.